Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are diving into lesson 7 of exploring statistics in agricultural research. In this video, we'll delve into principles of experimental design. The objective of this video is to help you understand the principles of experimental designs before designing your experiment. Let's get started. In agricultural research, when we are designing our experiments, we have to consider some principles. The first principle that we have to consider is randomization. This is one of the principles that we have to consider when we are designing our experiment. To avoid the bias, we have to make sure that we randomize. And then the second one that we have to consider is the replication. When you are designing your experiment, it's very important not to do your experiment once and you come up with a conclusion. You have to replicate whatever you are doing so that if there is any mistake that will happen in one replicate, at least that can be corrected on another replicate. So it's very important to have some replications, and most of the time the minimum number of replication is 3 on the experiment. Then we can have more replicates, maybe 4 replications or 5. It depends on the number of animals or number of objects that you want to use for your experiment. And then the third principle of the experiment that we want to consider, we call that as a blocking. Then this principle depends on your experiment, whether the experimental units are homogeneous or the experimental units are heterogeneous. If your experimental units are homogeneous, which means there is no need to apply the blocking once the experimental units are the same. But if the experimental units are heterogeneous, they are not the same, which means you have to apply the blocking. You have to put the groups. You have to put those similar groups in the same side and the other one in the same side so that you avoid the bias. Remember, what we are trying to do in agricultural research is to estimate whatever we are doing. We are trying to estimate. So all these 3 principles are very important to consider when you are designing your experiment. We are saying that you have to look at the randomization. How are you going to randomize to avoid the biasness? All the experimental units, they have a right to be selected. All the object or the subject that you are going to use in your research, they have a right to be, they have equal right rather to be selected. So that is the randomization. Then the other thing is you have to replicate. Don't do it once and replicate. Then the last one is blocking. That depends on the nature of the experimental units. So we are saying that all these 3 principles of experimental design are very important. In some of my videos, I will be dwelling much in one by one of these principles to make sure that you understand. Thank you for watching until the end. To recap, we have covered the principles of experimental design. Remember, agricultural researchers consider these principles of experimental design when they are designing their experiments. If you have any questions or topics you would like me to explore, please leave them in the comments below. Do not forget to subscribe, hit that like button and share this video. See you in the next one.